Welcome to Sunday School. Except for New Zealand, which I think it's a Monday now. Or Australia. Welcome. I'm so glad you came. I posted something I saw on the internet yesterday, a saying by Nisargadatta. It's so wonderfully simple and unmystical and clarifying. He said, Sadhana, which means our spiritual effort aimed to attain enlightenment or spirituality, was nothing more than a persistent attempt to cross over from the verbal to the nonverbal. And boy, when you do, things begin to really change. A whole new universe is revealed. One of wonder, freedom, and extraordinary experiences, which pass, but they make the entertainment worth it. I remember many, many years ago, even before I went to Mount Baldy, in 1970 or 71, having moments of no thought, and wondering what to make of them. At first, I didn't like them at all because I wasn't getting anything out of them. When I got to Mount Baldy, I found out that a totally silent mind revealed an entirely different form of existence, one where the boundaries were disappeared and everything became one. And there was great happiness in that experience. But after I left, and that kind of sitting was impossible for me to maintain, I felt that being without mind was still a waste of time. That it was my mind that set me apart from animals. I didn't see the state of emptiness as anything holy or worthwhile attaining. But then I met Robert late in my life. And that's all he talked about. But what is a silent mind? Does it mean no thoughts? Or does it mean not being attached to any thoughts? Having a thought-free mind can be attained fairly easily by just refusing to accept thoughts. By forcefully ejecting thoughts. But this just makes the mind hard and rejecting. And in spirituality, the state to be obtained is one of open and gracious acceptance of all experiences, including thoughts. But not being trapped by the world that thoughts create. In other words, you transcend thoughts. Which means you pay them no special heed. When a thought starts, you don't get caught by it and follow it, and then follow the train of secondary derivative thoughts. It's like you rise above thoughts, but it's not really that. It's coming to that state of mind, that experience of beingness, and resting there in that global mind that contains all of experience. But you don't allow the words that come from your mind to trap you into that abstract world created by thoughts. You're free from thoughts. You see the essential untruth of thoughts that they're merely supposed to function as a guide for understanding the world and how it operates. But there's a real world that exists before thoughts. And when you learn to live in that and accept that world, and so to speak, tune out thoughts, you become aware of other things. You become aware of the so-called levels of mind, the different states of mind, the different rooms of experience in that 1,000-room mansion that is you subjectively. The thinking world is not open to these rooms unless they intrude themselves into your everyday life. The thinking mind is where most of humanity lives all of the time. We trusted our minds to be our guide, to allow us to maneuver through the experiential world by understanding things, relationships, mechanisms, processes, things. But in fact, the thinking mind confines you to an artificial construct made up of our thoughts, our education, societal rules, conventions of behavior, and so forth. There are so many unwritten rules about performance and what we can do and what our limits are and what we should do. Rules of etiquette, and these vary by social economic classes and races. The conventions imposed by the structure of society, like education, and the content of education. We all tend to live in truncated worlds that are based on learned rules and limits. We're allowed to be free within a certain narrow framework imposed by state, culture, family. And when we've integrated all of these different rules, we can say that there's no more friction in our lives. Because we're not rubbing up against any of the laws of behavior that we need according to this artificial world we live in. And then we can talk about things like freedom. Freedom to pursue happiness. Freedom of elections. Freedom of mobility by cars, trains, and airplanes. But each of these has thousands of rules. So when we've carefully integrated all of these rules, we feel free because all of our activities are programmed by the limits created by all of these concepts, these societies, these cultures, these family structure, ideas, Republican, Democrat, socialist, communist, fascist. And yet there is always somebody somewhere struggling against the boundaries of their world because they feel the boundaries imposed on them are unfair. And they truly are. But in a way, all of these boundaries imposed on us are unfair. They're not something we would truly impose on ourselves. And we follow these rules out of fear. What are the consequences of breaking the rules? Well, one of the big consequences of breaking a lot of rules is imprisonment. Another is being ostracized. So one way to get around the rules is to not participate. You become a hermit, or you isolate with your own private family. That holds on to the structure you create by a diminished set of rules that guide your behavior. And you're called free thinkers or something like that. But look at the world now. It's filled with conflict of all the various ideas and systems, and people who try to take advantage of the system that they live in. Trump fully realized that the artificial world we lived in was a sham. But he tried to get us to belong to his really shabby and criminal world. And unfortunately, 75 million people agreed with his shabby world as their world and voted for him. Trump was not trying to free people like spirituality is trying to free people. It's to give them license to be criminals and to elevate criminality above those who follow the previous rules set by society and governments. But we should need to understand the Trump phenomena, how people can reject the whole system and follow one guy who says there's a different world and get to the point where he can convince several thousand people to sack the Capitol. If he had been given another 4 years, he would have completely remade the United States. But we, as spiritual students, not only have to understand how words and ideas create structures of understanding and also of controlling behavior, and see through all of them, to see the world the way we could see it if we didn't have any education at all. And that part of that is learning how to live without thinking, to cross over permanently from the verbal to the nonverbal. Nisargadatta said in that same paragraph that people that live in the verbal world and get spirituality attempting to cross over into the nonverbal just don't understand, because understanding is in the verbal world. So they're trying to understand nonverbal from the verbal. And it's very stressful. There's no way you can understand the nonverbal while living in the verbal. For me, it came because of love. I became singularly devoted to love. There wasn't much room for verbal when one is immersed in the feeling of love. And when I was immersed in the silence of love, it allowed enough space for God to explode in me. But that itself is untruth. God is a concept imposed on an experience. It seemed like God at the time, but now it seems less personal to me. I love the life force. I feel it all the time. I see it all the time. But I don't think of it as God now. I think of it as me, or an essential component of me. It's not all of me. It's not identified with as me. The me I identify with has no characteristics whatsoever. It has no place in me. There's no space of it within me. There's no specific center of feeling of me. I am everywhere and nowhere. And the life force is there with me. as my most essential experiential thing. But it all happens within my own consciousness. In fact, the whole world of experience happens within my consciousness. This I accept. This truth I accept. But realize it's only true as a teaching device. Really, I have no words for who or what I am. And if you try to find within yourself the truth of who or what you are, you may run into many experiences where you think you found it. But after investigation, you'll see it was just another room in your spiritual mansion. How do I convey to you the wonder of being and living without the mind being in control? The freedom of being able to observe, to know, that all knowledge is sort of relevant only to the system that it's born from. It has not much relevance to someone who lives in the nonverbal world. And yet, I don't go out of my way to publicly break rules of behavior, to flaunt my freedom publicly. Because as Robert said, he had to be careful about what he said. Otherwise, he'd be stoned to death. So if you flaunt your freedoms just to demonstrate how free you are, either to yourself or to others, you're going to get into trouble. And so many teachers do get into trouble. So if you're going to avoid trouble, you still sort of act and pretend to be part of their system. As for yourself, then, you're free to adopt any uniform you want. You can create your own religion. You can wear exotic Buddhist robes or Catholic robes or Sufi robes, or just live with one dhoti all the time. You feel the freedom because mind means nothing to you now. The hardest thing in the world for me now to do is to think. I can't think. I used to make my living for 30 years rebutting psychiatric evaluations of injured workers. And this required me to shrink down into my skull, where I read every word that this idiot lawyer is writing about my wonderful clients. And I noticed they made up all kinds of shit, stretched all kinds of credulity about causation or anything else, misinterpreted testing results. And then I had to create a document which refuted all of their lies. I had a much more difficult time, though, when our own clients were lying. I couldn't come right out and call them liars because that simply does not help their case. So I relied on psychiatric test results to prove everything I said. And I became a master of interpreting and misinterpreting what these tests meant. There's a way you can play with the truths of any system. You work the system. You know what the rules are. And you bend the rules for the benefit of yourself or your client or of all people. And bending the rules makes it appear as if those rules are really holding because you don't touch them directly. You don't confront them directly. You become cagey. And I used to be able to exult in the way I was able to destroy the testimony of these psychiatrists. They melted in my hands. And it filled me with self-congratulation when I did a really masterful job of destroying them. But the process of focusing and thinking about all of these different rules, the rules of the court system, the rules of litigation, the rules of evidence presented in cases, as well as the content of that evidence and what the evidence means, is all very complex. And when I did that kind of work, I had to focus down into my mind and make my mind live again. And it wasn't pleasant. It was physically unpleasant to focus down and limit myself to thinking and to reactivate the mind. And now I can't do it anymore. I refuse to make the effort to close down. So now, instead of living in a castle, with a dozen bedrooms and a $5 million property gained from the system. I'm living a life of a semi-hermit with Karima and 4 remaining cats, safely staying off the streets. And when I do go out, obeying all the rules. This way I'm left alone. I really have no desire to flaunt the rules in any way or confront anybody with their rules. I used to love to confront people about their rules versus mine, my understanding versus their understanding. Got into a lot of fights. But now I'm indifferent to the rules, whoever's rules. They don't touch me. Jay? Gita?
This is happiness. Even if you have nothing, it is hard to find that contentment which comes from renunciation. I accept nothing. I reject nothing. And I am happy. The body trembles. The tongue falters. The mind is weary. Forsaking them all, I pursue my purpose happily. Knowing I do nothing, I do whatever comes my way, and I am happy. Bound to his body, the seeker insists on striving or on sitting still. But I no longer suppose the body is mine or is not mine, and I am happy. Sleeping, sitting, walking. Nothing good or bad befalls me. I sleep, I sit, I walk, and I am happy. Struggling or at rest, nothing is won or lost. I have forsaken the joy of winning and the sorrow of losing, and I am happy. For pleasures come and go. How often I have watched their inconstancy, but I have forsaken good and bad, and now I am happy.
Are you happy, Jay?
I feel blessed to be here. I'm happy because something so profoundly perfect descending grace comes from your gift of grace and bliss and being to us. Yes, I'm happy. I read those words that you let me read, and I first of all thought, because to me it seems it's pure Advaita, and there was something in a sense that what you said today resonated so deeply with just exquisite, the life force, so exquisite. My mind won't shut up. I can't become dead as a rock. I try to meditate and slow it down, but it still kind of gets away from me. But even mundanity, I can deal with it because of what happens here, because of this. You take me to the well in a way that I just, it's unfathomable, indescribable, exquisite. Yes, you explode me every time. I can only tell you that I love you for that, and what I feel here, simply on my knees with my forehead on the feet of everyone in the Sangha, and just grace and joy. Thank you for what you share and allow me to share. I love you.
Thank you, Jay. May your mind go away soon.
Thank you. A Shaktipat sadhana. You took me very close to there once, and I love you for that. Thank you.
I love you too. Hi, Zach.
Hello, Ed.
How are you?
Good. I've missed you.
Where have you been?
Not at Satsang.
Hmm.
But I love you very much. You explode me as well. You still my mind. Thank you.
Annis? Good to see you back.
We don't hear you.
Oh. Being away for a few months has made me more grateful of this group and the clarity that you teach in Ed. And so I'm very grateful. I love all of you, and I love you, Ed, and I really appreciate everything you do and the peace that you help us experience.
Thank you. Vasilina, what's the good word?
What's that?
What's the good word from you?
I feel really good being in satsang. I feel like I needed it to feel the way you make us all feel here. I needed the spiritual presence. I'm very good right now.
Well, you're trapped in a difficult place. You're in an education you didn't want, but you can't think of anything else to do that's better. So good luck until whatever you're supposed to do becomes manifest to you. Good luck. Mark?
Hello, Edgy. Everything is unfolding for me the way it should be, in my opinion. One thing about the mundane world, the everyday self, it's a fake world because, not because there isn't truth to it, but because there's an inordinate amount of emphasis on it as if that's the only reality. And it's hammered into us from the time we're born. So that it constrains us like an albatross is what I'm talking about. It's like a brainwashing. So yes, the nonverbal, yes, the totality of self. Yes, sinking below all that structure or above it in order to function holistically as a single entity containing everything. That's all I want to say right now. It's really hard to talk about this stuff, but I love you, Ed.
I love you too. Mary, what say you today?
I'm on board with what everybody said here. The love that I feel for you, the love that I feel for everyone. It's magnificent. It's just joy. It's just the clarity that you bring, the peace that I feel. The struggles that I have when you're not here seems to be a big thing for me lately.
Give me an example. One instance.
When you're present and you speak, it's just you confirm everything and everything just I feel like I'm in that place of no mind, free, flowing. But when you're not here, and I choose to come just the same, to be in the presence of everybody, I just struggle with the confusion of listening to what everybody's sharing. And sometimes there's so much resistance. Because instead of being instead of just being, I get so, it doesn't pull me, it pulls me here in the mind. And that's when everything starts to come up, like not the judging, but like you're hearing this point of view, you're hearing this point of view, you're hearing this, and then it just becomes jargon for me. And then I question myself and I'm like, well, why do I come then? So lately it's been like this for me. I don't know.
I don't understand still what you're talking about. Can you give me a specific case that's happened to you recently?
Let me share something only from the other day, because I've been trying to read passages from Nisargadatta, from a man by the name of Galen Sharp, who became enlightened through a Brit who spent most of his life in South India. And what I basically have said is that
Can't hear you.
but I'm often better when I mute myself. So let me start over. No, I think what happens is there are cross currents of people. Some people more attained, if you can use that word. I tried to share passages from Nisargadatta to try to expound upon allowing me to read from the Ashtavakra Gita. But there's something about, I know what I don't know. And what I don't know is where you come from is grace and pure being. I live in becoming, and there's a filament that you've passed through to being. And Mark talks about being, and Mary talks about being, and Stevie talks about being. And being is descending grace, and that realization of grace on that level is not an attainment that I've experienced. And I think what happens at the end of it is it's just words. There's no validation, and it tends to leave a residue that may suggest, all it ever suggests to me is like that the reason I'm here, and most of it comes down to Wednesdays and Sundays, because I started more than 2 years ago, and I came because Shakti led me to you. And every Wednesday and Sunday explodes me. And that doesn't seem to happen the other days of the week, except that the love that comes from everyone here makes me want to be there, because that's exquisite. But it's not the same, Ed, as when you're here. At least I can't become dumb as a rock. My mind chatters all the time. And I don't know how to, I meditate, but Mary's consternation comes from like a day like yesterday, where the cross currents make it her divine silence was exquisite. And as she finds her way to share with us, it is exquisite, because you and she have shared something very, very deep. And I understand that, because all we are trying to do, I think why we're here, is to find that grace. So I don't know, Wednesdays and Sundays explode me. The other days are a beatitude, blessings, and a gift. But something about you is you are the manifest God. You have brought grace and bliss and joy in every satsang. and they feel like Shaktipat sadhanas to me every time. That's all. I don't know how to say it any other way. I came here for you. I come here for you. I don't seek any other gurus. I love you more than I can, more than I can describe. I don't know that I answered that, but I tried. I mean, it was simply,
I don't see you anymore. I don't know where you are. Is your picture? Oh, there you are. Okay.
me?
Yeah.
My stadium lighting, you know, sometimes I've been, I don't know. No, I'm not afraid of the light, but no, Ed, as I said, I think Siddhara Meshwar describes the Guru's grace, one of the most exquisite books. And he really, well, it's, again, there's something, every satsang is a darshan. It absolutely resonates beyond words. It's exquisite. Your love for us, the life force in you, is just magically, mystically, quantifiably exquisite. So I'm going to mute myself because I think I passed my word count again by a whole lot. Thank you, Ed.
My God, I'm unimaginably great. I am beyond.
You are beyond, yes. You are beyond God.
I'm Terrifosaurus. Mary, I'm not done with you. What are some of these situations? And I'm not talking about other satsangs. I'm talking about in your everyday life that is, when you're away from me, it's causing problems.
It's not my sort of everyday life. It's when I'm present here. So I come here. I used to come almost daily, but I'm here with you Wednesdays and Sundays. But then the other days when you're not, I used to come almost all the time. But lately, I'm drifting away from it because I find that I'm struggling with it.
Okay. Can you tell me why?
Well, I mean, Jay's touched base on that. I find that when you're not present, obviously, I mean, Monday, clearly Stevie's leading. Tuesday, clearly Maxie's leading. But the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, it's just kind of up in the air. But it's not, you see, I don't want it to come out across that I'm expecting it to be in some way or shape or form. But what I'm saying is that personally, when I come, and then because of that there's no lead and everybody is sharing, which is, it's lovely. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but I notice in myself things arising. like a battle is happening. Because in that time spent and the words and the verbal sharing, I get caught. I get caught in that verbiage. And sometimes I'm like, I just want to escape. And I say, why did I come?
Did you want to say, cut your bullshit and just
Yeah,
shut the fuck up?
I feel like that Zen master that wants to have that stick and just whack it to bring everybody back. Because I see that the carrying away and the on and on and on and
they haven't crossed over to the nonverbal.
Yeah, I see that. But I don't mean it like I am not here. You see, when you said at the beginning, when you spoke, and you said you don't want to flaunt, that's not what I want to do. That's not what I hope it's not coming across like that. But it's just like, I have nothing to say. I get lost and all I hear is it just becomes noise and static noise for me. And I drift off.
What about at home? Is it different? Nobody else in your household dwells in heaven.
No, they don't.
They're all in the mundane.
Yes, they are.
How does that affect you?
It affects me as well. It affects me as well. But it's more at home. It's just a little bit more
tolerable.
Tolerable because I could. It's family. So if I have to say something, I will stand and outright say it. But with the group,
they should know better.
No, I'm mostly silent and I just let it be. But the struggle is there and I just like, well, how do I don't know. And so that's the struggle. It's like,
where do you want to bring them to?
I want to bring them to what you spoke about today, to free themselves, because it's beautiful when everybody's sharing something, but then I feel that for the most part, if it's confusing me, I can imagine
how confused they are.
Yeah. It's been really a struggle. Yeah. And sometimes I can't help it. It just comes over me and I have to speak. And when I do, sometimes I feel like, well, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Maybe I should have, or I question, that maybe I came off too, that I shouldn't have said it, that maybe I offended. I don't know.
Okay, relax. You're off the hook.
Okay.
Anybody want to add something or subtract something? Enrique, do you have anything to say? Ian?
As Mary spoke, I felt like the source of the problem because I talk a lot. I'm not the only one that talks a lot, but I talk a lot. And I have an idea of what's happening or what's going on, which I then own, which is probably not such a good idea. I also see that in a group situation without you, there's a desire to place everybody according to the ideas of what's going on in the meeting. And right now I feel like I'm talking too much, you see. I suppose I'm still placing value in my apparent knowledge. Yeah. And that would sum it up. But yeah, I know that I piss Mary off sometimes. I know it. I can see it. And I have a choice about whether that's good or bad. I have great faith in Mary's state, and I believe that what she's going through is what she probably needs to go through. It's, what do they call, the annealing, the strengthening, the ongoing process past the experience. You know, I've got all the words and I've got all the theories, and that's all very well, but my desire is always to be in grace, nothing else. When I feel the desire to talk, I talk. But I also see it as part of the plan. You know, it's the whole thing. I had a thing with Jay at the start. I thought Jay talked too much, and now it might be me who talks too much. The whole thing just goes round and round and round, and there must be, when we meet and we have these beautiful minds meeting, I believe there's enough compounded Shakti to make whatever needs to happen, happen. Yeah.
Compounded Shakti.
Yeah, compounded Shakti.
Is that the same as composted Shakti?
No, compounded Shakti hasn't yet been composted. When it's composted, it's particularly rich.
I liked Enrique's answer.
Spencer.
I don't really know what to say. I think it's definitely easier to not take your own mind so seriously. So I don't really know what else to say, sorry.
Okay. Anybody else? Last call. Last call.
Hi,
Yes.
because you asked. Okay. As you said, I'm the prisoner of verbal mind with strong habits. And it's very hard to understand non-verbal anything. But on Sundays, it is like composted energy, and Wednesdays and Sundays. And other days, as Ian said, it's very strong energy too. So I come almost all the days. If I miss any due to other work, just to get recharged. And that takes me the whole day, almost whole day. And I also noticed that if I somewhat don't attend, I notice that I am reacting or overreacting. To anything. When I attend or come here and soak into the energy and the field of you guys, and it is so, I have, even if you say something, I just don't really care. And if someone says something directly at me, or it just goes over, I don't even, for me, it's like, that's okay. I don't care. I mean, that happens because that happens. Not that if I don't attend that, I would feel like, no, that's not okay, but it's a little more than that. Over the years, I understood that if someone says that, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's good for me because the moment I feel hurt, there is something that I need to correct. I need to look deep within what's being hurt and work on it and get over. That's what my process has been. And that's how I learn. That's how people would help me. If they criticize me or anything, that's good for me because there is something that would react or hurt within me. I just look at, initially I might react, but I just look into it and investigate a little more deep into what's causing that ego hurt, that where is the point of that, and then I just work over that.
Well, you've given us all our assignments, which is to try to make you as uncomfortable as possible during each satsang, so you have something to work on.
I love you.
I know that Rajiv gave you something to work on.
He did, but it just went away then. It wasn't much. Like for a few days I was thinking about it, and then I thought, well, that's over.
Do you ever hear from Dia anymore?
No, I did not. I asked her once, twice to send healing to some people who are suffering, and she did, and that's it. And I didn't have any other communication after that.
Okay. Well, I love you all. Come again. And let's build a ashram somewhere. Maybe Bulgaria. It's cheap there. Or maybe New York City. There are a lot of people there. Forgive me if I don't mention Australia. Shankarananda keeps inviting me to come and live at the ashram. And I just tell him I'm too old to make that journey. Move everything to Australia. I could manage to move as far as San Diego maybe, but over 130 miles.
You will be instantaneously successful if you open an ashram in India, but I suggest you not to come.
Yeah, I know. I have so many friends from India. I think of the 2,700 friends I have, maybe 500 are from India. Many of them are followers of Ramana, who I cannot stand. So once they learn that, they'll let go of me. They'll drop me like a hot rock. Anyway, I love you all. I'll see you Wednesday, maybe, and definitely next Sunday.
Love you, Ed. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Welcome, Cassie. Bye-bye. I have to turn this over to somebody. Who does it allow me to? Doesn't give me a lot of choices. I'd turn it over to Enrique, but he won't say anything. Tried and true. Mark. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.